Want to make a difference in geographic fields? Volunteer with the Northstar GIS and help build a racially just geography for a racially just world. Sign up now at northstargis.org/volunteer.
Be Black. Be bold. Be innovative. Show the world equitable geo.
We're coming together as a collective to celebrate people of African descent, the diaspora, and talking about geospatial equity and justice.
You're listening to the Northstar GAZE, a podcast with intimate stories from geoluminaries. Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Northstar GAZE. I am so excited today. We have Elizabeth Cotton from Black Tech Link as our guest today. And this is the fifth, I think, in the series of Women in GIS. Eva Reid is accompanying me again. Eva Reid is with Dewberry. If you have not been listening to this series, I'm urging you to go back to the beginning of the episodes on Women in GIS and please take a listen. So let's just jump right on in. Eva, do you want to take us off by introducing yourself again and Elizabeth to the audience?
Thanks, Erica. Yeah. So my name is Eva Reid. I am the program manager for geospatial solutions and analytics at Dewberry. We do everything GIS, everything from data development to implementation to application development. Really exciting work. And I'm also very excited to be here doing this podcast. We've had some great guests, and today's guest is no less great. Very excited to talk to Liz and hear more about what you're doing. Yeah. So Liz, maybe you can start by telling us about the mission and vision of Black Tech Link.
Yeah, so Black Tech Link, we're founded in 2020 as a nonprofit organization in California. Our mission is to focus on the economic development of Black communities by providing workforce solutions, technical training, and networking opportunities. We really strive to support adults and youth really in their journey in tech and business. We try to identify obstacles while they're pursuing education or hurdles they may come across in their career or business and try and provide support, whether it's supplemental education or mentorship. And that's what we do.
Can you tell us a little bit more about some of those challenges that folks are facing in the tech ecosystem?
Looking at youth, for example, a lot of underrepresented youth may not necessarily have access to tech learning or tech training opportunities. My organization focuses primarily on San Diego County, and in Southeast San Diego, there's some lack of opportunities when it comes to STEM training. There's not necessarily official robotics programs south of the 8 freeway. And so that's kind of a challenge for students that may be interested in pursuing technology, not having that continuous access. So what we did was we created a youth STEM and robotics program. Really during the pandemic, we were shipping robotics kits to students' houses and trying to keep them engaged, doing virtual conversations. And we learned some of the challenges that students have, not having access to laptops, not having great Wi-Fi. Sometimes parents don't necessarily understand these are the things that students need to be successful or build their curiosity and interest in STEM. I always say that some students are users of technology instead of creators and innovators behind it. So I really strive to support students in building that curiosity and interest through our youth STEM and robotics program. So that's one. Some other challenges in California, we don't have the luxury of being a chocolate city. So when a lot of San Diego or California transplants come, they're trying to find community. It's a lot mentally draining, working in a predominantly white institution and trying to, stay grounded. And that could be a challenge mentally for some people. So we started hosting networking events along with other community organizations locally, focusing on professional development events. So professionals have the opportunity to come and network. And that has been our claim to fame in San Diego. As I shared earlier, our Where Business, Law, and Tech Intersect event brings together students, professionals, entrepreneurs, and provides a place for them to connect. And so that's how we're solving that challenge. And then entrepreneurs, we also have a small business mastery program. Access to capital is one of the biggest issues, and not knowing how to prepare to ask for financial support for your nonprofit or your business. We provide education solutions to support entrepreneurs and founders in their journey. And we really also build community around that as well.
How do students find you? Are your programs aligned with schools, or is it parents that come to Black Tech Link and say, I want my children to be exposed to this additional STEM education?
So we do a little both. Parents find us. We also work with youth serving organizations. Right now, we're actually working with the Deltas for a youth STEM and robotics program. So they already have youth programs they do all year long. And then they come to us and say, we'd like to add a STEM element to our programming. And we come and offer our youth STEM and robotics training to the students that they serve. We do that with a variety of organizations that may focus on the students, but not necessarily on building tech programs and tech training. We come and provide that supplemental support.
So both of my sisters will kill me if I don't mention that you said Delta. So that's Delta Sigma Theta. Both of my sisters are lifetime members. I am not a member. I'm merely a biological sister. But I do love the work that Delta Sigma Theta does. And it doesn't shock me at all that they are working with you to help increase skills and capabilities of youngsters. So go DST. Are you DST also?
No, I'm not. But my grandmother is. And my grandmother right now, she's suffering from Alzheimer's. But man, when she was in her heyday, she was a beast, you know? If you go to her house decked out in all red, it's really great. And I love it. And she's very inspiring. I was really happy to provide support for the Deltas when they came. It's kind of an honor to me.
How did you come to focus on this area of expanding access and opportunity? Clearly there's a gap, but what is it that you saw that made you say, we've got to jump in here and do this?
I would say maybe it was through my own experiences, going through the corporate world, going through educational systems, PWI educational systems, where I realized that, and then also coming out of college and realizing that I was the only person that looked like me in certain spaces. I grew up in Los Angeles County, South LA, South Central LA. And it was rough, growing up there in the 90s. My parents, like a lot of parents, moved to the suburbs around Southern California, whether it's Palmdale, the high desert, or Inland Empire. But my parents still kept the house like most people in LA. And when I graduated from college, I actually went back to live in that house because my work was there. I worked at the California Science Center, and it was my first job out of college. But when I came back, I was like, did the city get worse? It was kind of troubling. I would think there would be some improvement, coming back to where I grew up. There was improvement, but I felt like there was room that I can provide support. That's kind of what led me on my journey. As I got out of college, I was like, how can I give back? And so I had a friend of mine where I worked at the California Science Center. I asked him, what are some things that I can get involved in? And he was like, maybe you should try the Urban League. And so there's a group, the Urban League Young Professionals, and I joined, and we started quickly giving back through programs, volunteering. They're a very service-oriented organization. And that's kind of how I learned like how nonprofit organizations give back to communities, and supporting economic development, workforce development. And that was really inspiring me. I mean, I straight up left my job and pursued that. I didn't know what I was doing, but I went and worked for them for free. Like, they had interns they were paying, but I just wanted to learn the business of doing this work. And that's what inspired me. Even being in college, people go to school for all kinds of things, but sometimes maybe they're still lost, being in college. And so I noticed that, and I always knew my purpose and what I wanted to do. I went to school for international business and Portuguese, and I knew that I wanted to do something around international. I went and got a certificate in global logistics, and I started doing exporting and importing. All the students were like, how did you get this job? And so I quickly was developing like pathways for them, like, hey, you need to do this, 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 and this. And so that was instilled in the work that I do now, creating pathways for people to realize their dreams.
Very cool.
Okay. So you've talked a bit about some of the different ways or some of the different pathways that you found yourself, and you sort of translated that into work for other people. I'm curious, we're talking about women in GIS, so I'm wondering how the GIS piece comes in for you.
Oh, yeah. I do a lot of this work building convenings for people to connect. I wanted to do a big convening in San Diego, and it was called the Western Regional Diversity Conference to increase diversity in entertainment, business, and technology. And in doing that, I was able to connect with an organization called Blacks in Technology, which is a huge national organization. They do a lot of work online. I was able to connect with the national director, and he introduced me to subsectors of technology, just of all of the groups and the members in his organization. And that's when I quickly learned about GIS. And I was so interested in that work. After I did my conference, the director asked me, hey, can you put a conference on for Blacks in Technology? And I said, absolutely. And so we're getting all of these talk requests and people submitting workshops. And the first year I was like, this is great. But after learning about the work that GIS professionals are doing, I said, this is a technology that, technologists need to learn. In building the second conference, I was like, we need to get the GIS professionals to share this work that they're doing in such a niche sector of technology, but it's used in multiple industries. And we need to start training people in this or getting their feet wet. As I was planning the conference in San Diego, I started connecting with, I think it was something melanin mapping maybe. And then, I got invited to Esri, which is also in Southern California. People don't realize that, I just got connected there, and then there I got connected with Northstar GIS. But it was literally Blacks at Esri that reached out and wanted to find ways to support our conference, the work that I was doing in San Diego. And I always kept that in my back pocket. And also the Esri User Conference is in San Diego every year. So it was just kind of lining up, for me to kind of jump into this work. I think it was 2022 where the Esri User Conference came to San Diego, and Northstar GIS said we needed to increase the representation of Black professionals and students that are in attendance to this conference. And I was like, I got you. Let me do this work. I thrive on building, convenings and networking among people. So let me do this light work really quickly. And so we reached out to professionals through my LinkedIn network, which has like 7,000 followers. And that was the post that went viral. Like I posted my wedding picture on LinkedIn and got 7,000 rock professional people. So I reached out to everyone that was a GIS professional, and I said, Esri has some complimentary tickets. And that was one of the biggest convenings of Black professionals at Esri, in 2022. It was so great. We had a cool networking event that year. I ended up catching COVID. That was the only time. And I was like, I knew I should have waited. But that was such a good event of meeting of the minds. We had people from Southern, Northern California, Arizona, Colorado, even Nevada. I just reached out to my immediate network that I knew would come from the West Coast to the event. And people flew out and came, and it was such a really great event. I feel like that solidified my relationship with Northstar. We hosted a kind of like an impromptu panel discussion at one of the networking events. And in that event, I invited all of my technologist colleagues, engineers, to come. And all of them were like, which GIS?
Yeah.
And I was like, you guys are these prominent software engineers and they haven't touched it. And so I felt like that was an opportunity to plan for some additional programming in the future. And that kind of like planted the seed for me to start doing this GIS work.
Invest in racial equity in geography. Your donation to the Northstar GIS fuels scholarships, mentorship, community-driven initiatives, and more. Give today at northstargis.org/donate.
It's so funny because we were going to ask, what is the role of partnerships for you in Black Tech Link? And you've obviously described this, and I'm going, oh, maybe we can get Eva and Liz together because Eva does convenings of women in GIS. And here in the DC Metro, there is a need for more of what you are describing, right? How do you get more of the cross-pollination? How do we get the Black engineers together with the Black GIS professionals, together with the Black people who are working in robotics so that we can all enrich our careers? But you've got my brain twisting around here going, where do we plant these additional seeds? And how do we get Liz more on the East Coast? We know you just did an event in New York City, but we need some Liz love here in the DC Metro as well.
Absolutely. I enjoyed coming to the Northstar GIS conference in November. I enjoyed my time in DC. My whole team came for that one. And so looking to come back.
I think that your point, both of your point about getting the non-GIS technologists and the GIS folks together is really important. I'm always amazed when I talk to non-GIS technical folks that they don't know more about GIS. It's such an important technology. I spent years when I was working in government training people about GIS. And so it was always mind-boggling, oh, you haven't heard about it yet. And so I get excited because I get to tell someone about it, but can get them excited about it. Don't really have a question. It is just mind-boggling to me that there isn't more connection already. So we have a lot of work to do here still. So I'm excited about this.
Absolutely. Speak to that point. I speak to a lot of technologists and software engineers and industrial engineers, and I ask them, what has been your educational journey in learning the platforms? And I feel sometimes that GIS is taught only in certain majors, but not necessarily with CS majors. I see GIS being taught to geography students, to geology students, but not necessarily in other applicable real world majors. I would have loved to have learned GIS in college, just as an international business student, how amazing that would have been. All of the people that went to school for CS that are learning Python, and like there's a real need for Python like developers in the GIS space, especially at Esri, And and how just GIS is used in public health, how it's used in construction. I feel like it's a very niche technology that's only taught in certain fields of study.
It really should not be. On last week's episode, we had a young woman on, Kaylin Soares, who said, really, we should be introducing GIS in elementary school, right? So that kids come up understanding the connections between geospatial technology and every other thing that they are doing. I lived overseas for a couple of years, and I put together a thing. It was like 100 applications of GIS, because a lot of the people I was speaking to really had not been exposed. And there are applications in agriculture and city planning, and there are applications across all of these different fields that can help you achieve your goals more effectively. But there is a tremendous gap. I don't know what we do about it, but I'm so glad that you raised this point. This should be one of our missions here in this conversation and in Northstar GIS to expose more technologists to GIS.
Yeah. In our youth center robotics program, we actually teach story maps to students to increase their geospatial thinking, their spatial analysis, because we learned in the pandemic, there was a loss of learning. Kids were at home. And we noticed that loss of learning when we hosted our youth center robotics program. I remember one year we were teaching students story maps, and I said, okay, go ahead and put your address in. And half the students did not know their address. Like, they knew a gist where they lived, but I was like, you don't know your address. I said, you're going to go back home and you're going to find your address where you live. And you're going to come back next week and we're going to plug it into story maps so we can create this. And by the end of the program, students were plugging in their school, their hospital, place of birth. We did a project called Where I'm From to help them think about where they're from, what they're familiar with, but also think what challenges do they see locally and visually in their own community. And that creates a sense of like civic engagement. So that was a project that we introduced. But also, to your point of increasing opportunity for technologists to learn this skill set, our organization was awarded some funding from the Cal Jobs First initiative to create a GIS training program. So we're in the middle of our first cohort. And when we first promoted the program, I didn't know who was going to sign up. I thought it was just maybe low-skilled adults, but they weren't low-skilled. They already were prevalent technologists that wanted to learn the skill set. So we provided this upskilling opportunity, and people are like, yeah, hopefully after I complete this, I'm able to get that promotion, get a job. So that's the work we're doing right now to support the growth of GIS.
How many people are in that first cohort, roughly?
Well, we had 25 sign up.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people wanted to do the program virtually, but we really wanted to do it in person. So we had 8 actually officially, and then now we're at 5. It's dwindling down, but the 5 that are there are so locked in. And some people had to drop out because of like work commitments. And so I'm trying to figure out ways to make the program more accessible for people, whether it's a virtual component or a self-paced component. But I know that since it is a technical program, it's so important sometimes to get that in-person instruction. Our goal is to have them complete the Esri Fundamental Foundation exam. I feel like we're preparing them for the GIS Pro exam in our class, but we wanted to start, something very simple. Like, let's start here. And I know that for sure that all the students that will complete the program will pass with flying colors. But if they're interested in the GIS Pro exam, that's something they can try and pursue.
So you are a woman and a woman of color in this tech space. Are there challenges that you are seeing as you are pursuing funding, opportunities to, oh boy. And what are you seeing as the persistent barriers? Tell us a little bit about the challenges and the opportunities that you are seeing, please.
So there's a program that we run right now called BIPOC Coastal Research Program. It's for college students that are interested in marine biology, oceanography, coastal conservation, environmental science. There's a report showing that there's a lack of increased education or professional students of color advancing in this space. And so I wanted to provide a support program that introduced them to research activities along the coast. I planned this program with a local institution of higher education. They were the ones that supported the whole planning process, providing mentors. And it was great. We had our first cohort last year, 15 students. A big draw to our program is that we get students scuba certified. Then we also teach them GIS, we just teach them story maps because they're going to need to be more locked in if they're going to learn like the full suite of our GIS Pro. But we get them interested in one of our students from our first cohort actually is pursuing GIS fully. They went to the Esri user conference, got to meet Don Ray. It was fantastic. And so now we're in our second year and during this administration, and the support that I was supposed to be getting from my local institution of higher ed has completely shifted. They're worried that my program does not follow their non-discrimination policy as it specifically supports BIPOC students. And I'm learning how to navigate that and still work with them, because they're providing a lot of great resources for students to advance in the space. But, some of the access that we had to labs and to lecturers and researchers, that access is being shut down, or it needs to be open for all, which is fine. But it's a fellowship program, right? You're supposed to provide some type of unique opportunities for the students. So that's kind of one of the challenges that I've been dealing with. As far as funding goes, since a lot of nonprofits have lost federal funding as their objectives may not align with federal grants. And, well, I wouldn't say federal grants, but just the grant maker at this time. It's become a lot more competitive identifying grants. I think I got 3 messages this week saying that I was not selected for funding. This has been the largest amount of grants that we received ever. I understand why, because, some of the larger institutions can't rely on the larger grants that the federal government provide, or maybe state grant makers, local grant makers. And so they're having to go after the smaller funds that were probably designated for grassroots organizations. So it is becoming a lot more competitive. Also, if you are an institution that exclusively supports like a certain demographic, there may be like a loss of funding for you. That's something that I realized, even just not getting the support that I was looking for originally for my program, the BIPOC Coastal Research Program. And I remember some of those conversations was like, do you want to change your mission? I was at the GIS conference talking to someone from one of the HBCUs, and I was telling them about my nonprofit, and they were like, you can change your mission. And I was like, I'm not going to change my mission. It's specifically to support Black communities. I don't know if you saw that list of keywords that the federal government tags. I'm like, well, I guess I'm out because I'm Black. There's this SNL skit called Lisa from Temecula. Temecula is near but she's at the table doing all this stuff, and then the manager comes like, is there a problem here? And she's like, why? Because we Black. We just minding our business. But I think about that all the time, and I'm like, why is this happening? But in the midst of grant making, we are very creative. We don't rely just on one grant maker or one funder. We try to diversify our portfolio of funding, whether it's grants, contracts, or providing services for other nonprofits or small businesses. So we can meet our needs and funding needs to provide the work that we do. So. Yeah.
I'm thinking about what you've just said and how things are changing. What do you see as your next big plan? Obviously, you don't want to change your mission, and kudos to you for that. It's very hard right now to say, I'm sticking with my mission, and I'm going to have to make adjustments because I'm sticking with my mission. But what does the next thing look like for you? You've got all these wonderful programs. Are you thinking about new programs? Are you thinking about what kinds of funding? What are the next things on your minds?
No new programs. We have 5 solid programs. I shared our youth STEM and robotics, our GIS training program, our BIPOC coastal, our business law and tech, and we have our small business mastery program. Those are our 5 programs that we do. I'm trying to figure out how to build capacity for those programs and grow the impact of the work. Specifically for our GIS program, I'm trying to identify ways to increase the training institute's offerings. So right now we're doing intro to GIS. I would love to do intro to story maps, mapping and drones. And right now there's a big push for supporting community health workers. And so offering, support for different industries and how GIS can support them. We're actually bidding on a workforce partnership or bid to provide support for community health workers in our region and teaching them GIS mapping and how that can be used to support community health workers. There are ways that we try to stay afloat, even with our BIPOC coastal research program, teaching other conservation organizations how to utilize GIS in their lines of work. Our BIPOC coastal research program, looking at ways to utilize GIS to monitor environmental issues. Right now, there's a crisis, a binational crisis, the Tijuana River crisis, where pollution is flowing from border into this marine protected area. It's impacting cities and communities like Imperial Beach, Coronado even, and figuring out ways how we can utilize GIS to inform on that work. So that's some of what we're doing and teaching students how to utilize that technology as well. In doing that, we get support from local government, cities. We've gotten some funding from the city of San Diego. We're also really relying on local community funds to provide this level of support, state funding. Our goal this year was reach out to federal funding. Last year, that was our strategy to expand, and that is at a pause until things change. We're also looked at some international funding as well. So surprisingly, the Brazilian government has some interest in providing projects that support the relationships of Americans coming over to Brazil, experiencing their culture. And so looking into that. And then, like I mentioned, bids and contracts. So we don't only just look at grants, but we look at ways that we can bid on government contracts too. And then also reaching out to private foundations. So that's been on one of our strategies, even if it's just simply hey, let's have a conversation. Here's our portfolio of the work that we've done, what we're looking to do. If it's of interest, let's have a conversation for future funding. So planting that seed. And so that's kind of the work that we're embarking on right now. I try not to charge for my programs because I believe knowledge should be free. But, at the end of the day, I'd rather those that actually have the funding, to pay for it.
I think a lot of organizations right now are having that same or similar sort of info conversation. And to your point, I think a lot of folks would really like to be able to provide more free programs because there is obviously need, and it becomes more of a conversation about how can we be creative, how can we work with organizations it might have funding, and what are the creative ways that we can look at using that funding, and, maybe having some folks that do pay and then some folks that don't have to. And it's complicated. And I'm sure you're, working through all of that.
Trying to become sustainable with our training institute. There's a program in California called Employment Training Panel or Eligibility Training Partner. And when you partner with the workforce agency, they are required through the state to support unemployed individuals like case managers. And so when we partner with workforce partnerships, they're able to send us students. And when we're accredited or through the Bureau of Post-Secondary Private Education, and we go to workforce partnership and say, hey, we're accredited, then they will send us people. And for every person they send, we get like $2,500 to $7,000 per person that we train. My sister actually had a trucking school. She's about to sell it now, but it's only been around for 4 or 5 years, but she's doing well. But that was the first thing that she did, was get that accreditation and partner with Workforce Partnership. So she has some level of sustainability, and they're sending her people to get trained, and she's getting paid to do that training. And that's a big part of workforce development that may be missed with some organizations that are looking to provide training programs. Is there's funding for you to train people.
I think people are going to be listening with great interest to what you're saying right now, because there are a lot of people in our audience who have some skills, but they're not always sure how to leverage those skills to create opportunities. It sounds like you, with Black Tech Link and with your sister's trucking school, you guys have honed in on linking your capabilities to some funding sources. Let me ask you, Liz, because you interact with so many technologists, what trends or opportunities are you seeing in tech that you're excited about? What do you see coming down the pike? You started out talking about robotics, but what other things do you see that are exciting? What's ahead?
Well, AI is really exciting. A lot of technologists are identifying ways to utilize AI agents to automate work, and I think that's really cool. I've shared my interest in conservation and environmental science. I think aquaculture and aquaponics are a big thing that a lot of people aren't talking about. There's a lot of funding for that. Creating sustainable ways for agriculture. Urban farms are a big thing. I actually went to Disney World a few weeks ago, to the Epcot Center, and Disney had this amazing installation ride, and it was like an urban farm, and you're just kind of going through it, and they have a huge aquaponics tank where they had fish on the bottom and they're actually growing the plants on the top. I feel like there's a lot of funding for an investment for that kind of work. And so it's something I was interested in. There's always room to learn GIS. I'm trying to make it more accessible for people to learn about it. Like, I just gave a conversation on GIS to the San Diego Promise Zone about how GIS can be used in all kinds of local industries. And the Promise Zone's like, yeah, we created our thing out of story maps, our website. And it was just very interesting. And a lot of people are asking to train their associates in this technology. And also Autodesk. I feel like Autodesk is not talked about as much. AutoCAD, and how industrial engineers are utilizing like Fusion 360 manufacturing. Those are like some really cool technologies. And I think also a lot of new career opportunities or jobs that I see, especially in the GIS field, is like, do you know AutoCAD and GIS together? Another training program that we're looking to develop in the future is how to utilize like Autodesk's suite of products.
Just to follow up on what Liz just said, that conversation about CAD and GIS working together is something that's having a resurgence in the geospatial field in general. Professional folks and organizations have been talking about this because it's done, certainly, but it's not being done well. So that's definitely an area that we need more folks you have both of those skills and not just, I have CAD expertise and this other person has GIS expertise and they're fucking together. We really need more people that have both of those.
We're just about at the top of the hour. I've got a couple of quick questions for you, Liz, as we start wrapping up. First of all, how can people connect with or support the work that you're doing at Black Tech Link?
Yeah, they can visit our website, blacktechlink.org, follow us on social, Black Tech Link. Our team is pretty accessible through Instagram. We're on LinkedIn and Facebook.
And what would be your ask for our listeners and for members of Northstar GIS? How can we, as GIS professionals, support you more effectively?
Reach out and provide suggestions. If you have ideas on how to partner, grow your programs. And I love having those conversations about ways to partner, how to build community. I would say reach out. My email is blacktechlink@gmail.com. I'm always just, if you're working in different spaces and want to just have conversation, I'm still a newbie in this space. So any ideas you may have, how we can grow, support the students that we serve and give them access to different opportunities, different spaces, I would say, please feel free to reach out. We're all open ears.
Thank you so much. This series on women in GIS has been so eye-opening for me. I'm so appreciative of you, Liz, making time for us. And Eva is awesome, right? I can't say it enough. Eva Reid goes above and beyond to help bring people to the Northstar GAZE podcast and to keep us thinking about ways in which women in this space can have more impacts. I'm just grateful to you both for making time for the Northstar GAZE podcast today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Northstar GAZE, intimate stories from geoluminaries. If you're inspired to advance racial justice in geo fields, please share this podcast with other listeners in your community. The intro and outro are produced by Organized Sound Productions with original music created by Kid Bodega. The Northstar GAZE is produced in large part by donations and sponsorship. To learn more about Northstar GIS, check us out at northstargis.org and on Facebook or Instagram at GIS Northstar. If you'd like to support this podcast and Northstar of GIS, consider donating at northstarofgis.org/donate. Or to sponsor this podcast, email podcast@northstarofgis.org. You've been listening to the Northstar GAZE.